And welcome into Gator Bytes on the 1010XL.com podcast network, also being simulcast on the Florida Gator 1010XL Facebook page. Today's Gator podcast is brought to you by Southeast Orthopedic Specialist, the Northeast Florida's leading orthopedic center, providing an unparalleled level of care across numerous locations in both Jacksonville and St. Augustine. That includes Riverside, Northside, the South Side, the Beaches, Fleming Island, and St. John's. He is Graham Marsh. I'm the hacker Ryan Green. You, presumably, are Florida Gator fans getting ready for what probably is the biggest game to date in Billy Napier's time at the University of Florida. Texas A&M tomorrow, 3:30, Ben Hill Griffin Stadium at Florida Field. In light of what happened 2 weeks ago, Graham, against Miami, it probably is Napier's biggest game tomorrow against the Aggies.
Yeah, we were talking off air, and we obviously disagree on who should be at the quarterback position, but we'll get to that in time. But I think we both agree that it is his biggest game to date. And if he loses, then every game after that will continue to be his biggest game to date because the seat will just be warmer and warmer and warmer and warmer.
And eventually it won't matter anymore.
Correct. These hot seats eventually burn, right? So, I want to ask you, Hack, and I think I have a general idea of where you'll go with the answer, given how you just opened that, and I agree. If they lose to A&M, what are the circumstances then regarding Billy Napier and how long his leash is after that?
I mean, it depends the kind of game. If it's a Miami-esque game, he might be in trouble on Sunday.
Yeah.
And I really mean that.
Yeah.
If A&M comes in there tomorrow and wins by 30, then he might be in trouble on Sunday. I don't foresee that happening.
I don't either.
To me, this game is 6 in one hand, half a dozen in the other. I've been going back and forth on it all week, and we'll get to predictions in a moment. We'll get to Mertz and Lagway, but I want to begin with Billy. And this is something I brought up on Hacker After Dark this week. I don't know if you heard it or not. Gator fans, when they're set in their ways, they very rarely, if ever, change. When they made up their opinion on Ron Zook, he was gone.
Yeah.
And, in fact, they fired Ron Zook before he went into Tallahassee and won a game on Bobby Bowden Field to close out his tenure.
You mean Ron Zook Field?
Ron Zook Field.
In Doak Campbell Stadium.
When they made their mind up on Will Muschamp, he was done. Now, Muschamp tanked after that, but there was no coming back for Will.
Mm.
Same thing with McElwain, same thing for Mullen.
Yeah.
What's interesting is I'm assuming a vast majority of the people listening and watching us right now on Gator Bytes have already made their mind up on Billy Napier. Not to put words in your mouth, but listening to you in Denmark on your other podcast and having dialogue with you before we hit the record button here, as an alum, I think you've made your mind up on Billy Napier. My question is simply this. What happens if he beats A&M tomorrow? What happens if they go to Starkville and they beat Mississippi State?
Yeah.
What happens if they beat UCF? Have you seen Kentucky?
Mm-hmm.
Kentucky's terrible.
They look really, really
awful.
bad, man.
Now, look, it gets considerably harder after that, but have Gator fans made up their mind? Are they set in their ways like they normally are? Some would call that maybe stubborn. Or is there a chance, room, whatever verbiage you want to use, that Napier can get back in their good graces?
I think there's room. I think it's certainly possible. But it's like Hail Mary territory. You know what I'm saying? Like yeah, there's room. It's like saying a team has a chance to win, but they're down 8 with 2 seconds left, and they're on the opponent's 30.
All right. Hail Mary, I like that because I think you're right. Keep in mind, 4 of their next 5 opponents, this ridiculously hard schedule that we've all talked about.
Yeah.
I believe 4 of their next 5 opponents are not currently ranked.
They're not. Then there's a team called Tennessee that plays in Knoxville that they're going to have to play after those 4.
Yeah. After that, it's ridiculously hard. Sure.
So you're not wrong. Like it actually lines up a little bit more favorably than I think maybe previously thought when the season began. For the next couple of weeks before the Tennessee game and then really before the Georgia game and then on, because we know that's when the gauntlet really starts. I just think that from what I've seen from this team, because I personally think watching the Samford game, knowing who they played and knowing how bad the opponent was, I don't even think they played very well against Samford. I mean, if they played a higher quality opponent that night, I'm not sure they walk out of there with a win.
It was 21-7, right?
Yeah, like, I mean, come on.
Yeah.
So, quarterback aside, the rest of the team on both sides of the ball, you're not wrong that the teams they're about to play are going to be gettable teams that are also struggling. In the next 4, though, I would say it's basically a Hail Mary. They're going to rip them all off and go 4-0, based on what I've seen.
Yeah, I don't know if they can go 4-0, but I think they could win any one of them. They could also lose any one of them. But you're talking about A&M, Mississippi State, UCF, Kentucky. That's not exactly murderer's row.
And it's not, but I would say because of what is after that and because they have already gotten smoked by Miami in their own stadium, I don't know that they have a choice but to go undefeated. Just looking at the totality of the schedule, if they don't rip off multiple wins in a row here, where else is it going to come?
Agreed. I mean, Florida State's down, but Texas is great. Georgia looks great. Ole Miss looks great. LSU, we'll see.
Man, Texas might beat them by 200 points, dude.
Yeah, it potentially could be very bad. Let's get to tomorrow. We're recording this on Friday about, 30 hours. It's 9:15 in the morning. 30 hours away from kickoff. All week long. Mertz or Lagway. Lagway or Mertz.
I've been looking forward to this conversation.
And the depth chart, they're not releasing a depth chart, which is interesting.
I have my own thoughts about that.
All right, so we'll get to that in a moment. This is not me just being different for different's sake. Marsh will tell you, last week we sat here 7 days ago. I said, I don't care how DJ Lagway plays against Samford, and you can vouch for me.
You did.
That's true. Did not care. And he threw for 456 yards, but I said prior to that, it did not matter to me. If Graham Mertz is healthy, he needs to be the starting quarterback against A&M. I believe Graham Mertz is healthy. I believe he will be the starting quarterback tomorrow against Texas A&M. Billy Napier's job, yeah, part of it, I guess, is to build for the future. Part of it is to get the fan base some excitement, some hope. We hear about that word hope, right? Billy Napier's primary job tomorrow at 3:30 is to beat Texas A&M. He's not playing for 2025 because most of you don't want him here anyway. He's not looking ahead to getting, the freshman quarterback some SEC experience. His job is to win a football game tomorrow on September the 14th, 2024 at 3:30 Eastern Standard Time. Now, if they're playing this game on November 14th, maybe my thoughts would be different. But tomorrow, Graham Mertz, in my opinion, absolutely without one shadow of a doubt, gives Florida the best chance to win. Do I want to see DJ Lagway tomorrow? Sure. I want to see him, and I think we will see him. But I want Mertz to take a majority of the snaps. Thoughts?
So I'll give you credit. You were out in front of this before the Samford game. You were. You have stuck to your guns. We talked about this last week. What you said last week, you still believe you are staying true to what you said. The problem is what you said is wrong. Because, listen, it is an age thing, as we said before the pod. You told me offline that you think it's an age thing because people my age agree with me, people your age tend to agree with you.
Yes. At least that's my experience this week.
And I believe that the reason people your age and above are agreeing with you, and I don't even think they all are. I think there are older Gator fans that are agreeing with me, and maybe some younger that want Mertz to play, but probably less of those. This is not 1990, man. Mm-hmm. True freshmen play. True freshman quarterbacks play. Who gives Nebraska the best chance to win right now? Is it Dylan Raiola or is it some junior that has experience?
Matt Rule's not coaching for his job. Very different circumstance. Very different circumstance.
He's still starting a true freshman.
Right, but it's a different circumstance. Billy Napier needs to win tomorrow. Does Matt Rule need to win tomorrow?
If Matt Rule was on the scorching hot seat, Dylan Raiola would still start for him.
Well, okay, but here's the thing. All right, Dylan Raiola has actually played a Power 5 team, has actually done some things. DJ Lagway last week played a high school team, the equivalent of a high school football team.
Right, but you got to start somewhere.
You do, right?
Nebraska's first game, that was his first game against a Power 5 opponent, was it not?
Graham Mertz threw 20 touchdowns and 3 picks last year. Completed 73% of his passes.
He was good last year. I don't think Graham Mertz sucks or anything like that.
How many games did they legitimately lose last year? Because I know they lost games with, and I got ridiculed on Facebook.
But
People don't
because of-
listen to
right.
what I'm saying. They lost games with Graham Mertz. I'm asking you last year how many games they lost because of Graham Mertz.
Yeah, I get what you're saying. My problem with that is their offense is objectively worse this year, talent-wise, because we believed at the beginning of the year there were a certain set of young guys that were going to pan out. That so far, I mean, Sanford's kind of tough because it's easier to get young guys involved. We don't really know, I guess, yet.
Yeah, it's been 8 quarters.
But against Miami, I mean, Aiden Mizell didn't play.
Right.
Andy Jean was hurt. Some of these young guys are not getting in the game, so it's like, I mean, I thought we'd see like Tank Hawkins against Miami and he didn't play, or at least I didn't play of significance that I saw on offense. So you're kind of still sticking with the guys that have already gotten reps. Elijah Badger was not impressive against me, and I'm talking strictly against Miami. I'm not talking about Sanford because we both agree that you play at a high school team. We both agree that you can't take a whole lot.
That team was terrible.
Correct.
That team was terrible.
And we both agree there. Because I have yet to see some of these young guys that we expected to produce a little bit, and also like the Elijah Badgers of the world with the transfer portal, until I see those guys step up and start to serve a real role, their offense talent-wise is substantially worse than it was last year.
Mm-hmm.
Because Ricky Pearsall was your leading receiver last year, who was Mertz's go-to guy, who was the main receiver that he knew he could trust down the field to get the ball to. Your most explosive running back plays for the Georgia Bulldogs now. So those were your two best weapons on offense. I know Etienne is a bad pass blocker, yada, yada, yada. When he got the ball in his hands, he was the most explosive running back they had, and that's not arguable.
Yeah.
That said, Mertz is still the same guy, which is to me like a good quarterback, not a great quarterback, that does not have a lot around him right now, does not have a good play caller, in my opinion. And Mertz is very much a play within the scheme, run my offense, do what I need you to do type of quarterback. Right now, Florida needs a quarterback that can play above the X's and O's and just make special plays.
All right, so you just said the offense doesn't have a lot around them, and the offense doesn't have a good play caller, correct?
No, they don't, right. Correct.
So in that situation, the offense not having a lot of the skill positions and not having a good play caller, you're going to put an 18-year-old true freshman in that game on national television in an SEC opener in a game you absolutely have to win.
Yes.
Yeah, I could not possibly disagree with you more.
Okay, so what
could
about...
not possibly disagree with you more.
But this gets back to my... Hack, you're acting like true freshman quarterbacks don't play across the country.
No, they do.
That's the biggest place that I disagree with you.
No, but it's a different situation for Billy Napier.
But you could have said it was insane a couple years back in 2021 to say, wow, against Texas, Lincoln Riley's really going to put in this true freshman because Spencer Rattler's struggling when they're down. Caleb Williams brought him back.
And there's the problem with the youth of America. Everybody thinks DJ Lagway is going to be the next Caleb Williams. That's your example. How many true freshmen have gone out there that you're not going to mention? How many 20, 30, 40 true freshmen have gone out there in the 3 years prior to Caleb Williams and absolutely stunk the joint up? You're seeing Caleb Williams because of what he did against Samford. Well, let's talk about true freshmen in the last 3 years that have gone out there and absolutely been horrific in their first couple of starts.
There is absolutely a world where DJ Lagway goes in there and struggles a lot. I totally understand that. I'm using Caleb Williams as an example to show that true freshmen can be thrown into the fire.
Yeah, but you're using a Heisman winner and a number 1 pick in a future NFL draft.
Sure, but also just use Dylan Raiola, who just started, and he looks fantastic. Dylan Raiola and DJ Lagway were like neck and neck as recruits, were they not?
Yeah.
Matt
Rule's not under the pressure Napier is. There's a difference there.
Sure, but I would say there's really not a difference because if Matt Rule was under the same pressure, he would start Dylan Raiola. If he was if this was year 3 for Matt Rule and they lost like their first game with a different quarterback that's a junior or whatever, Dylan Raiola would be in the game for that.
And I don't know Nebraska's team.
Yeah, I don't either.
Maybe
we're not like experts.
Is there another quarterback on that roster that threw 20 touchdowns and 3 picks last year?
Probably not, but the point is
they don't have an option. That's the point. Florida has an option.
I don't think Florida does have an option.
That's wild to me.
We watched what this offense looks like with Mertz against Miami, and it was horrendous. Mertz played arguably his worst game as a Gator against Miami, did he not?
Yeah, did not play well.
He played really
Admittedly, you also said he has no playmakers and no play calling.
And that's my point. Because I believe that this offense is kind of almost doomed no matter what.
Yeah.
I think their only bullet in the chamber to maybe be explosive is maybe Lagway is that
Yeah, let's
guy.
send an 18-year-old out there to freelance and play backyard football with no playmakers and no play caller, as you describe it, and let's see how that works out.
He might be one of them, and he might be special. And if he's awful, I think this offense with Mertz would look awful anyways. I feel
That's why I think Napier's doing the right thing and doing the best of both worlds. You're making A&M prepare for both guys. You're not putting it all on Lagway. You're not saying, hey, kid, keys to the kingdom. In Graham Marsh's own words, we have no playmakers. I'm terrible at play calling, but here you go. Have at it. You're not putting that pressure on an 18-year-old. You're going to let him play, and you're going to let him showcase his talent, but you also have Graham Mertz there in case you know what hits the fan. That's why I think Napier starting Mertz, playing Mertz a majority of the snaps, but playing Lagway. I'm not opposed to playing Lagway. I just don't want Lagway to take 100% of the snaps. I don't want him to take 50% of the snaps. Maybe 70-30, maybe 65-35. I think that's a smart move. You're accomplishing everything you want to accomplish. You're getting the young kid some experience. You're putting him in there in an SEC game. You're getting his playmaking ability on display. Yet you're not dumping everything on his plate in his second career start in a game you absolutely have to win.
That's not a bad point.
Thank you.
Let me ask you this. Of course. Let me ask you this. If, let's say, fast forward to tomorrow about 4:30, 5 o'clock. It's halftime. Billy Napier's just done his halftime interview with whoever will be doing the sideline. I'm not sure. You and I are 9-10 chicken wings deep. A little bit of blue cheese or a little bit of ranch dressing.
Well, you will be. I'll be a knee deep into my Awaken 180 shake.
That is true. That's true.
Yes.
And Mertz has 2 picks. They're down by 14, and it looks real bad.
Okay. That's a different scenario.
Mm-hmm.
That's not the scenario we're talking about right now. If Mertz comes out there in the first half tomorrow and goes 6 of 17 for 72 yards, 2 picks, and they're down 24-7, well, then, yes, at that point, maybe you kind of throw your game plan in the air because, again, you have to win.
So the only reason I bring that up is because my question now with you, because I think, look, we're not going to agree on who should start the game, but, like, I don't even know if that matters that much because, look, if they start Mertz and he goes out there and looks awesome, then, like, I'll be the first to admit, like, Hack, you're right. This offense actually looks not half bad. Like, Mertz's experience is paying off. Or if he looks terrible, I don't think you would hesitate if he looked awful to be like, all right, it's probably time to give the true freshman.
Yeah, if he looks awful in the first half, then
right.
Yeah, at that point, the gloves are off.
Like we disagree on who should start the game, but my whole thing is, like, time will tell anyways. Like, playing football is going to tell anyways. I told Dylan this the other day on our podcast. I said, look, man, like, that's the topic of conversation this week, who should start. But 3 games from now, I feel like we're going to know pretty clearly what this is going to look like anyways. So let's just wait and see and let football get played. I think Mertz, unfortunately, because I don't think this is fair, because I do think Mertz is a good quarterback. I don't want anyone to think I think Mertz sucks. I don't. Unfortunately, I think because of the circumstances around the program as a whole, Mertz's leash is going to be pretty short.
Sure. And I get it. The fan base wants hope. The fan base wants something to believe in. They want to believe DJ Lagway is their Caleb Williams, and I totally understand that. But again, my point all week, Billy Napier can't worry about that. He can't worry about your feelings as a fan. He can't worry about what Graham Marsh wants or what anybody watching wants to happen in 3, 4, 5, 6 weeks from now. He needs to beat Texas A&M tomorrow. And to me, beating Texas A&M tomorrow means playing both Mertz and Lagway, but playing Mertz a majority of the snaps. Quickly, I want to get to the game. Southeast Orthopedic Specialists are the highest quality care. You can rely on them for any orthopedic injury or concern. You can log on to their website by going to se-ortho.com, and you can listen for Southeast Orthopedic Specialist, the good Dr. Kevin Murphy, on Thursday mornings in the 7 o'clock hour with Jeff and Dan right here on 1010XL for his weekly analysis of injuries in sports. Speaking of injuries, Trey Wilson's questionable, and I even saw a report last night leaning more towards doubtful to play. And then A&M puts out their list, and Connor Wigman's questionable. And we haven't talked at all about this, the A&M starting quarterback. I mean, what is going on with these injury reports? If this was the NFL and one team's best receiver is trending towards not playing, the other team's starting quarterback is questionable, it's all anybody would be talking about.
Yeah.
No one's even talking about this. It's just bizarre that both of those things popped up yesterday.
From everything I read, I think Wegman is going to play, I believe. He'll be questionable, whatever, and they'll play coy about it to throw a wrench in the Gators' game plans and all that. But I think Wegman does play it. Man, Wilson,
I don't remember him getting hurt last week.
I don't either. And if Trey Wilson don't play, man, I mean, we're arguing about Mertz versus Lagway. You or me may as well go back there and play quarterback. I don't know if it's going to matter if you take away Trey Wilson.
It would be bad. It would be bad.
I mean, who are you throwing to at that point, dude?
Well, you're throwing to Mizell, you're throwing to Boardingham, you're throwing to Marcus
The second
Burke.
person you said was Boardingham, dude.
Yeah.
That's a problem,
Marcus
bro.
Burke. No, it is. I mean, Jackson's out for the year too, obviously.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
I mean, there are issues there. Quickly, because I want to get to predictions, other games. You mentioned the depth chart. What's your thought on why Florida's not releasing their depth chart?
I think this is a move that a desperate coach makes, personally.
Yeah.
I think...
Because there's no you could release anything. You could put Burt and Ernie on your depth chart.
Correct.
It doesn't matter. You're not set in stone. It's not like you're going to be, fired at the stake if you don't honor that depth chart once the game kicks off.
You're only asked to... The SEC only requires you to release the availability report, right, which is what they did. But isn't it weird that... If you think about it, which is kind of crazy because of how much they've struggled since he's been the coach, if you think about it, this is honestly the first time Napier has ever had a QB controversy. In year one, it was always going to be Anthony Richardson, and last year, Mertz played well enough to where no one was ever really questioning him being the starter.
Yeah.
And he's always... I get that it's not required, but he has always released a depth chart. Since he was the coach, he has always released one. And now all of a sudden you got a QB controversy, and you're under the gun, and your seat is warm, and you're going to decide you don't want to release a depth chart? That's a desperate move, in my opinion.
Can I give you some deep thinking, some deep thought here on a Friday morning edition of Gator
Of course.
Bytes?
Should I play a little bit of Zen music in the background?
It would be wonderful.
A little bit of like waterfall sound effects in the background?
Just some food for thought.
Yeah.
Gator fans are done with Napier. Most of them.
Mm-hmm.
And you know you are. Some of you are like me and still hanging on by a thread, but most of you are done. Yet, if it wasn't for Billy Napier, DJ Lagway would not be your quarterback.
Yeah, I know.
Random thought. Discuss.
I think that's true for most.
And the only reason I'm saying that is I had Lagway on twice. I had him on twice, when he actually committed and when he signed. And on both occasions. Now, he could tell me whatever he wants. He doesn't know me from Adam. But on both occasions, I said, why'd you go to the University of Florida? And there were a lot of reasons. First answer was Billy Napier.
Yeah, and that's pretty well regarded that, like, he and Napier are real tight.
Well, you need to tell your people on social media that, because when I put that out last week, I was wrong and this, that, and the other. And then when I explained to people that that's actually what Lagway told me on two separate occasions, they tended not to respond anymore. It's funny how that happens.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I hear you. I think that's true a decent amount with a struggling coach. Like, not so much Mullen because recruiting was a big issue with him, but before, like, I remember McElwain had a lot of good recruits committed, but the product on the field was really, really struggling, and they felt like they needed to go in a different direction. And in my opinion, that turned out to be the right decision. I mean, Jamar Chase was committed to Jim McElwain.
I remember talking to Jamar Chase when Matt Corral was.
Matt Corral was committed, but I don't know that anybody looks back and says, if McElwain had brought in those guys, that they would have been something special at Florida. I think they would have struggled because of everything else that was going on under a Jim McElwain-led program. So, that's receipts right there.
I got Jamar Chase's cell phone still in my thing. I'm not going to show that, obviously, but I got his cell phone still in my...
Will you FaceTime him right now real quick on the podcast?
I'm not going to FaceTime Jamar Chase
Hey,
right
Jamar,
now.
what are your thoughts on Billy Napier?
But I remember when he committed to Florida, because I had him on when I was covering recruiting back in the day.
And it would have been amazing to have Jamar Chase, don't get me wrong. But I do think that you can't one or two individual players, as special as they may be, if the program is fundamentally broken under a coach, I think it's just cost of doing business, unfortunately. Now, is there a world where I believe they could go hire a different coach and hopefully save Lagway if they get a really big fish? Like, sure, and that would obviously be an ideal situation if they do get rid of Billy Napier eventually this year. But even if they can't, even if Lagway does leave, if it means a chance to rebuild the program with somebody else when if this regime continues to struggle and eventually never gets off the hot seat they're currently on, it sucks, but I think it's necessary.
I gave Gator fans the benefit of the doubt this offseason because I used the term realistic when it came to Gator fans. I said you were going to be realistic because I believe you were going to be realistic, and some of you might still be. But realistic, you should have known, was 7-5.
Mm-hmm.
Realistic was making a bowl game. They're 1-1, right? Now, obviously, the loss to Miami was terrible. They've played 2 games after an offseason where you told me that you were going to be realistic. And realistic meant 7-5 or 6-6. And yet you're ready to throw the coach out the window 2 games in.
So,
is this not something that was expected for the last 8 months?
So, record-wise, yes. Like, record-wise, 1-1 was very much on the table right now. What I would say to that, the one thing I would say to that is I think a lot of, even a lot of reasonable people on this topic said that it's not so much the actual record as it is how it looks.
Mm-hmm.
And it could not have possibly looked worse against Miami. So that has expedited the process a bit, in my opinion. And Chris Doering specifically has kind of been on that all offseason, like, it's not necessarily the record. Like, if they only win 5 games, but they're competitive against Miami, if they're competitive against when they go to Texas, they're competitive when they play Georgia, like, that's a little bit different. And we can all say, okay, well, the schedule was just super hard, whatever. But, man, if they continue to get the brakes beaten off of them like they did against – and Miami might be really good. Who knows? There's still a lot of football left to be played to kind of let this all shake out. But I have agreed with the sentiment that it isn't necessarily the record technically. It's more so how it looks. And it'd be tough to look worse than it did week 1. So it'll depend. We got more football to play, but if it keeps looking like this, it's over.
We got 5 minutes to go. Southeast Orthopedic Specialist brings you Gator Bytes. They're Northeast Florida's leading orthopedic center. They provide an unparalleled level of care across numerous locations in both Jacksonville and St. Augustine. That includes Riverside, Northside, the South Side, the beaches, Fleming Island, and St. John's. All right. When we get to Gators and A&M, we'll save them for the end. Quickly in the Southeastern Conference. Alabama goes to Wisconsin. Any problem for the Crimson Tide tomorrow?
No. They'll roll them.
They were, I mean, it was funny. They won by 26 last week.
It didn't.
That was a game with USF in the fourth quarter.
They struggle. I think USF is way better than a lot of people know about and give them credit for. Byron Brown is a beast. Their quarterback. I think Bama's going to be pissed off. They're going to be a little more up for it because it's a Power 4 opponent. They roll them.
Ole Miss goes to Wake Forest. Any problem for the Rebels?
No, they roll them.
I would agree with that. Let's see. Tulane, Oklahoma. Oklahoma survived last week against Houston. Does Tulane give them any issues?
Tulane gives them issues.
I think so, too.
Yeah.
Tulane almost beat Kansas State last week.
I know. They arguably should have.
And I do wonder where they're going to be mentally because they kind of let that one get away, and now you got to go to Norman. But I think Oklahoma's in a battle tomorrow.
If they don't have if Tulane didn't give up the fumble recovery for a touchdown against K-State, they probably win.
I'll tell you the game that I might be looking forward to the most tomorrow is Boston College, Missouri.
Yeah.
That's a good game.
That is a good game.
2 top 25 teams going at it.
That feels like a night game.
Yeah.
Is it a night game?
12:45 SEC
okay,
Network.
Well, never mind.
Yeah. It should be a night game.
Yeah. No, that's a great game. Castellanos is a beast, man. I really enjoy watching him play, and Missouri's good, dude.
Missouri's
should
number
be a great
6
game.
in the country.
I bet that's 27-24, something like that.
Some SEC, ACC bragging rights on the line there. Georgia goes to Kentucky. I don't know what that was last week from Kentucky. It wasn't good.
Man, Kentucky can't complete a forward pass.
No.
I mean, Vandergriff was terrible.
And Georgia playing against him. He was obviously at one point committed to Georgia. I think Georgia goes to Lexington and beats the brakes off of them.
And Vandergriff, to your point, Vandergriff was a guy, highly touted recruit, young, couldn't get on the field at Georgia. This is kind of his first time playing, and he looked awful. So it does exist for sure. I mean, that is certainly a potential outcome. And Vandegrift looked really bad. I don't see where they go from here.
OSU, South Carolina. Game day will be there tomorrow, and noon kick in Columbia.
Atmosphere will be electric. Game day will be really cool. South Carolina is an awesome college football environment. LSU kicks their ass.
Really?
Yeah.
To that extent?
Yeah.
I think LSU wins. That South Carolina D-line's legit, man.
They're legit. Their offense is a joke.
Yeah.
I got no faith in that offense.
We'll see.
And Sellers is hurt, man. It's what's his face from Robbie Ashford that's going to be playing. Nah, I got no confidence in that.
I'll take LSU, but keep your eye on that South Carolina defensive line tomorrow. They're good. And that brings us to A&M in Florida. I have literally been going back and forth on this all week. I thought at the beginning of the week, A&M. Towards the middle of the week, I started thinking with my orange and blue goggles on, even though I try to take them off from time to time. Started thinking Florida, kind of like I did against Miami. But I go back to the Friday before Florida-Miami. I sat here 2 weeks ago. I was like, yeah, man. Swamp magic. I think Florida's going to get it done. I do not feel Florida gets it done tomorrow.
I don't think so.
Whether it's a penalty, a turnover, a weird bounce of the ball, something is going to happen in the fourth quarter tomorrow, and think of me when it does. That's going to give A&M the win.
I'll think of you regardless.
Thank you, buddy. I appreciate that.
Yeah, man, I got a bad feeling they're going to get rolled again, dude.
I don't think they're going to get rolled. I don't think A&M's not as good as Miami.
They're not, and not to the Miami extent, but I got a bad feeling they lose by like 14.
The problem tomorrow is that front seven for A&M.
Mm-hmm.
They're good.
They are good.
And Florida's offensive line is not good.
Florida's going to struggle to run the ball again, most likely, and they're going to get behind the chains and have to throw it deep on 3rd and 10, and it's going to turn into picks.
If it gets bad in the first quarter, first half, there's going to be negative vibes in that stadium.
Mm-hmm.
Every time, and I don't like this, but I saw it firsthand with Leak and Tebow. I know it's going to happen. Lagway's going to go out there, do a couple of nice things. In comes Mertz, and the Boo Birds are going to come out in the swamp. And shame on you if you do that, and I mean that. But I think if it starts bad, the negativity swirling in that stadium will be palpable.
Yeah.
And I think that's going to play a factor too.
Yeah, I said this when we talked about it a minute ago, and I know I've said it multiple times, but I want to emphasize one more time. This is really not about Mertz almost like at all. It almost doesn't even have to do with him.
Well, for me it is, but not for you.
But like just in general, like the kind of general consensus, like it's kind of out of his control, I guess is my point. Like even if he does eventually get benched for Lagway, it's not because he's a bad QB, I don't think. It's other extenuating circumstances that don't really have much to do, or Lagway necessarily. It's things kind of above both their pay grades right now. Dude, I just don't have a good feeling, man. Like, and A&M's not a very good team. You're right. They lost at home to a Notre Dame team that lost to NIU last week.
Florida definitely could win. Again, I just think something negative is going to happen, whether it's a penalty, a turnover, something's going to happen in the fourth quarter.
I just think that they are once again going to really struggle to run the football, and that's going to give them all types of problems once again offensively. And, man, defensively, they got no better in the offseason. So they're going to be just as terrible as they were last year, and it's going to be the midway through the first or in the second quarter. There's going to be a wide open Aggie running down the field with nobody near him, and it's going to be a 70-yard touchdown or something like that. I don't have any faith in this anymore until I see otherwise. If they play well, I'll change my tune, but right now I'm not.
Hope we're wrong. We'll be back next week to review Florida and A&M on the road next week in Starkville, Mississippi State.
First away game.
When we're talking next week, is Billy Napier still the coach?
Yeah, he's still the coach.
I agree, unless it's Miami-esque tomorrow. If it's Miami-esque tomorrow, Sunday could be interesting, but I don't foresee that happening.
His seat is like broiling right now. It's just going to be broiling even more.
Yeah,
but he'll still be the coach. I think. Yeah, unless they get absolutely smoked, then he's got a couple more weeks left to live, I think.
Yeah, I agree. And again, I think Florida could win the game. I just think something is going to go bad in the fourth quarter that's going to cost them the victory. Either way, Graham Marsh, the hacker Ryan Green, will be back next week to recap it right here on Gator Bytes. Brought to you by Southeast Orthopedic Specialists, 1010XL.com, and the Florida Gator 1010XL Facebook page.